Ladies and gents, welcome back. Old videos will resurface during election periods, and the whole point of this is to show a candidate's views, opinions, or behavior as being redundant to today's contemporary politics. Now, right now, one is surfaced of Danielle Smith talking about COVID-19 mandates. And well, we're going to get into that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't show you Rachel Notley's opinion on the matter and perhaps her opinions during that time as well. We have here Rachel Notley saying, here is my statement in response to Danielle Smith's offensive comments regarding vaccination and the clankety-clank funny mustache regime. In the middle of the global health crisis, Albertans came together to protect themselves, their neighbors, their communities, and their hospitals, and goes on to a long tweet thread, which I'll leave in the comments down below because we're going to, for the sake of time, move on. Here's some of the views from Rachel Notley in the past here during 2021. The UCP has delayed its vaccine mandate for frontline healthcare workers twice. Let's be clear, unvaccinated staff should not be in our hospitals treating patients or handling medical supplies in the labs or beds. Or in their labs, sorry. And well, that turned out to not be so accurate with the science. We need a vaccine mandate for Alberta school staff and healthcare providers. We need a vaccine mandate for frontline healthcare workers is absolutely necessary. These people are in direct path of the COVID-19 virus. All of this stuff turned out to not actually be accurate with the science. And here you go. Here's Rachel Notley. I got my fourth vaccine or second booster today. These vaccines save so many lives. Book your appointment here. Of course, the depending on your age and demographic, these are not accurate statements as well. The science has shown us today. Now, we have this video that surfaced of Danielle Smith, and I'll just let it play.
I noticed you're not wearing a poppy, I'm not wearing a poppy, but they ruined it for me this year. The political leaders standing on their soapbox, pretending that they care about all the things that you just talked about, pretending they understand the sacrifice, and not understanding that their actions are exactly the actions that.
So the greater context of the poppy is that they booted, dishonorable discharges for servicemen and women that did not take the vaccine. This is something that ruined the poppy for a lot of people, and a lot of veterans are very much opposed to the mandates that were brought in. So that's the larger context there.
Our brave men and women in uniform are fighting against. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the Netflix series, How to Become a Tyrant, but it starts with Hitler in the first episode, and it's absolutely appalling and shocking.
Yeah.
How and it's one academic says, I know so many people would say, and they must have filmed this before COVID, so many people say that they would not have succumbed to the charms of a tyrant, somebody telling them that they have all the answers. And he said, I guarantee you would.
And just for context here, here's the clip from that Netflix documentary where How to Become a Tyrant, where the person actually says that.
It's very easy for us to go, I would never fall for the seductive charms of a tyrant like Hitler. I promise you would.
Absolute rule is going to take a strong stomach. Torture is a very good way to deter.
So again, links in the description. I can't show its entirety, so we'll just stick with that and get back to what Danielle Smith had to say here.
And that's the test here, is we've seen it. We have 75% of the public who say, not only hit me, but hit me harder, and keep me away from those dirty unvaxxed. And even on the cover of the Toronto Star, saying, I want people who are unvaxxed to get sick and die, and I don't even care. I don't want them to get treatment. We're already hearing about people being denied treatment.
Let's, again, for context on this, here's the Toronto Star article, or sorry, front page that we saw here. If an unvaccinated person catches it from someone who is unvaccinated, boo-hoo, too bad. I have no empathy left for the willfully unvaccinated. Let them die. I honestly don't care if they die from COVID, not even a little bit. Unvaccinated patients do not deserve ICU beds. This was a publication front page from the Toronto Star in 2021 in the middle of the summer. And this is what she's commenting about. So I'll let her continue here.
for not being vaccinated, being taken off the organ donor list. What are we becoming?
That actually happened. People got taken off the organ donor lists and have been fighting ever since to get back on it because they refused to take the vaccine.
What are
That's
we becoming?
vile. That's vile and diabolical. Sorry.
It is diabolical.
It is diabolical. So let's move on. I have an article here from Don Wilson on WordPress. I'm going to, again, links in the description down below. Let's recapitulate. A fifth of the population was legally classified as unclean. They were barred from most public spaces, including theaters, restaurants, movies, pubs, clubs, swimming pools, sporting events, concerts, conventions, etc. To access public facilities, people had to carry a digital mark with them so authorities could confirm that they were clean. The unclean were fired and barred from most jobs, education, healthcare, courts, all public sector work, most major union jobs, and a wide smattering of major private employers. They were then fired, when they were fired, the unclean were denied employment insurance. The reason being that they had been fired for cause on account of being unclean. The unclean were banned from traveling on planes, trains, and chartered boats. They had no legal means of leaving the country. Even if they wanted to, they could not escape the country that obviously hated them so. It became illegal to socialize with the unclean. They weren't allowed to attend weddings or funerals or visit sick relatives or friends in hospital. Special laws were made for the unclean, subjecting them to house arrest if they were around a person who had recently had a positive PCR test. The unclean had to continue to cover their faces in public when universal masking was dropped. It became socially acceptable to wish death upon the unclean in social media and major news organizations. Public health figures and other politicians gave press conferences to shame and insult the unclean. The public developed shared pejorative names for them and relished in the resulting relished in insulting the unclean. The news media regularly ran polls asking the unclean saying that they should be arrested or fined. Public figures openly and proudly spoke without withholding medically necessary health from the unclean, letting them die. The unclean were removed from the organ transplant list and condemned to almost certain death. No end date for these measures was ever suggested, and no timeline was given. On the contrary, this was called the new normal. Criticizing any of these developments made you a social pariah and likely cost you most of your friendships, family relations, if not your job. The lesson of the Holocaust and of COVID isn't that Germans or Albertan people of the 20th century and are uniquely gullible or evil. It's that most people, morality is not a matter of principle, but rather of adopting what they perceive to be a dominant group ideology, even if that ideology is marked by wanton irrationality or brutal inhumanity. Indeed, as in certain cults or gangs, the brutality or irrationality of the acts or beliefs required to signal group inclusion further entrenched people into the ideology rather than repel them. A kind of perverse sunk cost fallacy writ large. So yes, if you're a typical person, Albertan, Canadian, or otherwise, it is overwhelmingly likely that you would have been part of the clankety clank funny mustache gang if you were born in that part of Germany in that time. If you cheered along lockdowns and mandates, that likelihood approaches certainty. Now, I would say that it wasn't necessarily 70% of Albertans that were cheering this on. I would say a large majority of people just did it to get along. They succumbed to the coercion, and they just did it out of reluctance, not because they were cheering it on. I believe that the cheerleaders of this were necessarily just a small group of individuals. Now, you can follow Don Wilson on Twitter. I recommend it. Definitely go check him out. He's got other things that he likes to talk about, and there's much more to be said there. Of course, links as always in the description down below. But we have another one here from another friend of the channel, Dan Fournier. He did a really thorough job of this one, the COVID-19 Holocaust comparison. It's a 6-part series, goes very in depth of all of this stuff. So definitely go check it out. Please, again, links in the description down below. Calgary Herald recently having this article. Danielle Smith says the clankety clank comments were made during a difficult and frustrating time of COVID pandemic. So kind of walking back the comments, which I don't think that she necessarily needs to, but this is the social pressure of, you know, when you're in the middle of an election here. Now, without going any further too much in depth, we had recently Justin Trudeau saying that he never forced anybody into vaccines. Of course, articles then immediately came out. Here's the first reading from ocanada.com. The evidence against Trudeau's claim he didn't force vaccination is clear here. Again, for the sake of time, I'll leave a link in the description. You can go read this article. But it says, you know, it was, you know, back in 2021 that they pushed COVID vaccine. It was the Liberal Party platform, to which I would say, no, it currently is. It still is. It's still on their website of top priorities. And this was, you know, finishing the fight against COVID-19, mandating vaccines. And, well, I would say that it's recent. In my other video, I showed this as well. People obviously looking at the source code of the website. It was last updated. This particular page was last updated on May 2nd of 2022. This is the Liberal Party platform. This is what we have to see. And maybe I should even leave a list of the Nuremberg Code, which came from the Nuremberg trials, that talks about all the things that happened during the pandemic. But hey, I'm gonna leave this one in your hands. What do you think about this video that's been circulating on social media? It's been pushed out there. The legacy media is really pushing on this one because they obviously don't want Danielle Smith to get in place. I don't think what she's had to say was actually anything bad. I think a lot of it was quoting other people, in a sense, quoting the person from that documentary. But I'll leave that up to you guys in the comments down below. So leave a comment, let me know what you think, and we'll see you in the next one. Keep on trucking.